Hey, we want to welcome you guys to the Robert and Christy Real Estate Team. We are now having a home buyer educational seminar. We are so happy that you guys are here with us. Thank you so very much.
What? No, just
okay. And we're also excited to have Adriel Esparza from Easy Funding joining us today, and he's going to give you a little quick elevator speech about him, and then he's going to dive right into a couple of tips on mortgages affordability in 2021. He's going to do some amazing comparisons, and he's also going to give us some tips to getting our offers won. So we're really excited to hear all that information. Before we really get started, there's a lot of content, so I'm not going to talk much. We're going to let him have the floor. But before we get started, we want everybody to mute themselves, please. We'll start with that. And then take notes. And go ahead and put questions in the chat box if you want, and we'll call upon you as we have that time slot open. Or raise your hand and keep that hand raised there on the Zoom. And then once we get that space, we'll ask you some questions, and you guys can unmute yourself real quick and answer or ask some questions, and we'll give you those answers. So if there's nothing else, we're going to go ahead and get ready because we got a lot of information. It's super exciting and really super valuable right now. So Adriel?
That's really good information.
Very good.
Hi, Harmon. Hi, Marty. I saw Sam and I was like,
very good.
Go ahead and mute us, and then or not mute us, whatever you're gonna do.
We won't talk.
All right.
Ready for me?
Got it.
Very good. So my name is Adriel Esparza with Easy Fundings, and the first loan I ever did was with a 9 1/4. See, ding dong, 9 1/4 interest rate, and I was in Santa Ana back in 1999. So when I bought my first home, 2001, my first loan had a 6.5 interest rate with a first-time buyer program. So been doing this for quite some time. 2,000 loans later. Been working with this team here for about the last decade. Been really blessed in that regard, and hopefully I'm returning the blessing as well to them. But we're in a pretty interesting time right now. I think, especially from a standpoint of what the media is saying, what facts are saying. Are they always converging? And especially as we all know, with the media, bad news normally rules, right? So there's a lot of questions about affordability. Rates have gone up. We started talking. It's funny because we started talking about this class 2.5 weeks ago, and 2.5 weeks ago, rates are about 3/8 lower. So this is going to be very, very timely, very right now type of data. But I'm hoping you guys can, take with you and hopefully give you at least a little bit better. Obviously, I don't expect you to know everything by the time these 30 minutes are done, or 30 or 40 minutes, but at least you'll be a little bit more well-equipped and you'll have some better knowledge. And with that, let's go ahead and rock and roll. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Share. Let's see if it's working. And we're sharing this one. All right. Do you see my? Oh, thank you. We're done. Okay. Let's see. Do you guys see my screen? Yes. Very good. Okay. So let's go ahead and get right into it. This is specific. We're going to break this up in 3 parts. We're going to first talk about just a general interest rate and housing outlook. Then I'm going to jump into a little bit of affordability. And then I'm going to conclude with talking about some more specifics in regards to how it works and what do those changes look like kind of at a glance. Of course, we'll get much more granular as when we hopefully get a chance to meet, or at least sometime later. The first thing is we have a new Treasury Secretary. This person used to be the chair of the Fed. This is Janet Yellen. And the reason why I bring her up is that she's actually very important into what I believe is going to be happening. She is not afraid of spending money, generally speaking, and independent of a political position. When there's more blue in the administration, there's generally going to be more spending, just generally speaking, right? So with that, she's in charge of that. With more debt, I believe we're going to continue to see interest rates stay low. I'm going to get into what all that means in a little bit, but her being back is a very big deal. A lot of times you're going to hear things about the Fed, right? Oh, the Fed dropped the rate today, so therefore, rates are, drop. Good. They'll say something like, "Good news for mortgage buyers. The rates dropped 0.5% today," and blah blah blah. And that's so far from the truth. As you can see, The red line here represents what the Fed funds rate does. That's what you hear on the media. But this right here represents rates. Now, does it follow it generally? Yeah. But let's take a look at that. This is a part where this is around 2009 to around 2015, where rates went from 4 to 5 1/8. As you can see, that the Fed funds rate didn't move. Here's another part where it went up another 1.25 from 3.5 to 4.75. So as you can see, there's no direct correlation from a Fed funds rate to this. That said, because we are borrowing so much money, it is in the Fed's and the country's, frankly, best interest, because they're dictating. Imagine you have a mortgage rate where you get to dictate what your rate is because that's what you're going to pay. That's kind of what the government, frankly, does, is that they're dictating what rate they're paying on the trillions of debt that they have. So as a result, generally speaking, it should stay on the lower end. Now, over history, what that's told us is that as debt increases, interest rates are going to continue to be low. So just, for those of you guys know your history, back in the early 80s and late 70s, we were talking about the oil embargo and things like that. We're talking about 18% rates. That also is a time where our debt was some of the lowest in history. But as time has progressed and we have debt almost at an all-time high, we also have rates at an all-time low. And this is not an America thing. This is actually a economic thing. This is France with the same type of spread. This is Japan with a whole lot of debt, but also lower interest rates. Again, 0% interest rates there. Same thing with Italy, same thing with the UK. So this is, again, an economic thing. It's not like, something that we're special with. It's just economics, okay? So what I believe is going to happen is I think rates are generally going to be low. I think, my personal opinion, with inflation, I think that right now inflation is a big issue. I think it's going to still continue to be pressured down, especially with the advent of additional technology, okay? The debt, of course, being higher. I think that there's about 10 million in the labor force that are still, we're kind of working our way back from COVID times, right? Not that it's over, of course, but there's still a lot of people, just like a lot of people that are working, there's a ton of people that aren't. And as those people come back into the supply chain, I ordered a Peloton, a month and a half ago, and I'm still fat because I haven't got my Peloton yet. I'm sure that's the only reason why, right? Just because I don't have the Peloton, but you know what I mean. They're not making stuff very fast, right? There's a lot of time that's lagging to get stuff, and that just has to do with just people in general. Also has to do with ships over in San Pedro, dropping off stuff. Lots of moving parts, but I think with more people working, it's going to alleviate the supply chain. I think there's going to be additional spending, like I said, with regards to Janet Yellen and the consensus of this kind of administration in regards to spending in general. Spending will require money. That's going to be money that we're going to get more in debt on, and I believe that's going to help us with rates being on the lower side. I still believe rates are going to go up in the near future. I always hate it when people say, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen. You know what? I'd rather give you my opinion. And I like to think it's an educated opinion from somebody that does this every day and sees this every day for 22 years, and then kind of cop out. At least I have an opinion. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But what I believe is going to happen is we're going to have rates. Right now, we're at around 3 1/8. We're at 2.75, 2 weeks ago. But we're at 3 1/8. I think we're going to range right now between 3 1/8 and 3.75 over the course of the next 3 or 4 months. I think we're going to drop down in the mid to late summer. That's my guess. And that has to do with, because there's going to be stimulus money coming in right now. There's going to be spending. But when that kind of wears off, I think that's going to be around the summer. And I think there may be a recession coming into next year. I can't really target it as 21 or 22, but at that point as well, I think rates are going to just have another dip down. So I think generally if 3.75 is the worst, okay, great. We're still going to be okay. I want to now talk about supply and demand, right? Basic economics, right? One thing is rates. That's one thing, but it's not the whole story, right? Supply and demand, basic economics. From a demand perspective, let's talk about that first. The prime buying age for a first-time buyer is 33 years old, okay? And that's just statistics, right? Well, in this bucket of people, we call these the millennials, we are right here. So the amount of people that are coming into the prime buying age to buy a home is going to be in these next 3 years in one of the two main times in history where we had a big population growth. right? So this, I think, is a very important chart because just from the standpoint of demand, there's going to be people continuing to buy. This, I think, is a very important slide in that construction, right? In regards to supply, people need to buy, or companies need to build homes. Through this time, and move my Zoom over here. During this time, this all COVID, right? So there was a period of time of 4 to 6 months that there was no building, right? So with that now we're in a position where there's multiple offers on properties, multiple people bidding on homes, and that's just a supply, mainly a supply issue. You couple that with the demand that we're talking about, that's kind of where we are at this moment in time. This is, I think, is also very important, and I believe nobody talks about this, but I think it's very important. Investors, let's say you have a home that you are paying a mortgage on and you're not getting any rents. Now that happened a little bit of this past year, right? With the forbearances that were happening, or excuse me, not forbearances, the no eviction notice, right? With COVID. So a little bit of that happened last year, but people have a fantastic equity position. So it's not like this time, for example, we're looking at 2009, where we had record vacancies and also low prices, right? At that time. When vacancies are high, and if you're making a mortgage payment, you're going to see a lot more people dumping homes, or getting rid of houses. When you're at some of the lowest vacancy rates in history, there's no reason for an investor or a property owner that has investment properties to let go of these properties. There's no reason. Why? Because they're getting top dollar for their rent. And even if they don't, they're still going to have a great equity position. So there's nobody that's really dumping or getting rid of houses, no emergency type of situations. And I see that for now and near future. As you can probably know, I talk about this often where, not often, but I talk about it often where when I short sold my home back in 2009, and I moved from a 3,800 square foot home to a 1,700 square foot home. And when we did that, my rent was like, I don't know, $1,400 a month, if I remember correctly. As time progressed, it went up to around $1,700, $1,800. I looked it up the other day and it was like $2,300. So you're talking about, we're talking about price appreciation, all that, but rents are not slowing down anytime soon. We're still at a reasonable clip in regards to rents. And frankly, homes that I'm seeing nowadays that used to be rented maybe for $2,700 are now going for $3,700. I don't see that slowing down. I don't see that slowing down. So let's keep going. Inventory, like I said, is at a record low. There's no reason for it to slow down. Now, why do I think it's a good time to buy? I think that interest rates are still going to continue to be continue to be low on the lower side. I see continued high demand. I talked to you about population, right? I talked to you about the prime buying age, right? And the tight supply. We talked about homes on the market. The people are not wanting to sell. A lot of people are just staying put. I think that's going to continue. And I think that the target of 5 to 6% appreciation over this next year is pretty much dead on. That's in my opinion. That's where I'm at for that first part. I know I kind of slammed through that. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, Adriel, on that 6% appreciation, was that national or was that local?
Local.
Local. Okay. Yeah, because we've seen gross of that appreciation go up in the 18 to 20% in some communities, in some areas of some communities over the last 12 months. So
yep.
Yeah, we don't see really.
Well, that's the forecasted one, but yes.
Yeah, no, so I definitely agree with you on that. Mm-hmm. That we're definitely seeing it to go.
I don't think there was any questions yet in the chat, but go ahead and unmute yourself if you have any quick questions for Adriel. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and move on to his next slides.
Quiet group.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're all muted,
That really helps them be quiet.
Hi. I have a quick question. Yes, I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the vacancies and, how just, I don't know, tell me more. We're at low vacancies right now. And I know that I had people come to me on Sunday about possibly renting. It's still vacant, but people, are still looking for properties to rent, even though we are at a low vacancy. So tell me more about why it's so low right now.
Why it's so low? Well, I think that people still need somewhere to live, right? One of the most basic food, shelter, water, right? So I think there's a path of least resistance that a lot of people go through in regards to rents. The other thing that has really taken off in the most recent last couple of years is things like the Airbnb type of situation, right? Or VRBOs and individual rent, room renting. A lot of people that are even in situations like, you know, grandma that or empty nesters, they're renting out rooms. So there's multiple people that are getting prime amounts of money for their space. I think moving forward, it's the only little X factor with California in regards to vacancies. Again, it has to do with if the property owner can hang, right? Because there's a lot of people. I also know people that have multiple properties that were not in the best of areas, and for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, because the renters did not pay their rent because of the eviction moratorium, right, for last year. There's some people that BK'd, and now they still kept their property, and also it's not like they didn't struggle, but those are few and far between. A lot of people had a significant equity position, and they're going to find a way. If you got a property with, you know, 40, 60, 80, $100,000 in equity position, you're going to figure out a way to pay it because you're not going to foreclose. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or if I'm elaborating enough, Erica.
No, you did. I think that I was just a little surprised that the vacancies are so low, even though unemployment is pretty high, obviously, because of the pandemic.
If I can add just a little bit to that, part of my understanding too, and especially because I do a lot of rentals and property management, is that we are seeing a lot of our sellers selling because the market's so high, and they're not willing to buy right now also because the market's higher. So they're actually renting, and they're sitting low and they're watching it. They're holding on to their money, deciding if they're moving out of state or to another home. So they're taking up some of these rentals too. So it's a caveat. It's a bunch of different factors that I think are leading to this low vacancy. So.
And this is a very important point. Actually, thanks for bringing that up, because it's all about a 1-to-1 ratio. So think about it. If you have normally it's a 1-to-1 ratio, right? So if somebody owns a home, in regards to supply, which I will go to, I can't find it. But anyways, if you're a 1-to-1 ratio, that means that, let's say you own a home right now. If I own a home and I sell a home, I'm going to go into another one. So now I'm canceling out that supply, right? As a move-up buyer, right? Because there was a property for sale, or they have a property for sale that's sold, but then they just took over another one, right? A first-time buyer is very different, right? They're just taking one, right? Very rarely is there a situation like what Christy's talking about, where they're selling something and they're not necessarily replacing it. So that's why I'm saying, that's why I feel very strongly, because the amount of people that are in that prime buying age it's one of the highest in history. So just by pure population, combined with everything else I just talked about, that I feel very, very, very bullish about the values.
Cool. All right.
Cool. Let's talk about affordability. I like talking about this because there is a misconception where, oh my God, the rates went up 0.5%. You're going to hear it on the TV. You're going to hear it on the TV that there was, rates or prices are all-time high. It's really bad for affordability for home buyers and right? There's more to the math that I want to share with you guys. So first of all, this is a graph of affordability. If just for sake of the quick version of this conversation here, if it's over 100, it's considered to be affordable, right? Over time, as you can see, 2004, 5, 6, for the amount of income for the way that income is calculated is based off of the weekly income. So it's not necessarily an hourly rate, because you can be somebody that makes 35 bucks an hour but only works 20 hours a week, right? So the way that affordability is calculated is based off of weekly income, okay? Now that said, 2006 was one of the most least affordable times in history, and we know what happened after that. This right now, and this may be surprising for many of you, because obviously prices are also at an all-time high, just like they were here. But why are we here now if we have all-time high prices? compared to, for example, right here. That has to do with income more than anything. So let me explain. So first, I just rounded down for the sake of easy math, and I hope that this makes sense. Let's assume, for sake of our conversation, and again, simple math, it's $1,000 a month of mortgage payment and $5,000 a month of income. Okay. Now, let's say there's a 5% increase in price. Forget rates. 5% increase in price. That now is $1,050, right? That's 5% of $50 is 5% of that. So that means you just have to make $5,050 a month to cover the rise in price, right? So therefore, the difference though is a lot of people say, oh, prices went up 5%, prices went up 6, 7, 10%. But what is that? That's not necessarily relative, or excuse me, it is relative to whatever your income is, right? Because you're based on your income. In this example, it's only a 1% increase in how much you make versus the 5% price and how it affects the payment. That's super important to understand in regards to affordability and why it's considered to be still affordable throughout, because people are still making good money. Yes, I understand a lot of people are unemployed, but based on statistics, the average wages over year went up by around 5 to 6%. So because of that, math really works. And let's get into exactly what that looks like on a real life example, as close to real life example as I can get. Again, for sake of easy math, let's use $350 as a price that it is right now. But let's say it was $327,000 Christmas of 2019. Okay. So therefore, we have a difference of $22,900 over the course of about a year. You got me so far? That's a 7% appreciation up 1 year. Let's say you get a loan and it's 5% down, right? That loan is now went from $310 that you could have gotten Christmas of 2 years ago, and now it's $332. It's a much bigger loan, $21,000 more. But the rate, interest rates at that time were around 3.75. Right now, they're hovering right in that 3% range. We're saving 3/4 in rate. Now, where does that math land? Even though your property went up, or a property went up from Christmas of last year or 2 years ago to now 7%, your payment, so the payment by itself is actually lower by $38, even though prices went up. Why? Because your payment is still on sale. Now, I like to put everything in there. I'm a big total cost guy. I don't like making things look better than what they are. So let me show you the other stuff. The mortgage insurance wouldn't have changed because you would have mortgage insurance on a 5% down property, right? So that would, of course, would go up. That would change to $9. So now your payment overall net is about $28 better now than what it was 14 months ago. I'm also taking into consideration you're going to need a little bit more down payment, right? The down payment for a house that's $350 is a little bit more than one that's $327. I'm also taking that into account if you spread that out. When you put in there the amount of actual increase, which again, 5.9%, that's around $300 a month for somebody that was making $5,000. I see W-2s and pay stubs all day, every day. I suck at everything else. Don't ask me to do, screw in a light bulb. Don't ask me to do your lawn. I suck at everything, but I'm very good at this stuff. And I see W-2s and income and credit multiple times a day. People are making more money than ever before. And so it's not like just stats. I personally am seeing this. So when you have that, something as simple as 5 to 6% an increase in wages, people are more, the house right now is more affordable than it was actually 14 months ago.
So I just want to quickly ask in conclusion to that, so all of us can kind of understand and grasp. Even though it looks like on here the purchase price is a little bit higher, with how great the rates are right now here today, and with people making more money, they're actually spending less and paying less on a monthly payment based on this. Correct. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we all are on the same page.
Yeah, and the break even on this, is right in that 3 1/8, 3 1/4 range. So it would be very similar math at around 3 1/4, and we're like I said, we're going to be right there. But I think the takeaway I'd like for you to take from this, is that there's a thought process that you may have missed the boat, or oh man, I wish I would have got in back in this time. Your payment is on sale. The price may not be on sale, but the payment's on sale. Now, there are some certain strategies. I talked about how it changed from 2 weeks ago to now, because frankly, when I did this a couple of weeks ago, a lot of the math was based on 2.75. So that's what I'm saying. This is very up to date and relevant math. But even so, if you're able to get a property and you're able to lock it up, and let's say you get a 3 1/8, 3 1/4, you're still okay. And especially if we're going down the road, I still believe just all the other market forces, unless there's some kind of a black swan event that we don't know, right? All we can do is predict and forecast based off of what we know, right? But if there's anything bad, generally it's still, every time that there's bad news, it's good for mortgage rates, you know? I think the thing that would maybe reverse that has to do more with employment. But again, all that is improving, So
we did get a really great question from Adrian. I think it may be something you're going to address later on. She was asking about a sweet spot regarding kind of credit score, debt to income ratio, just overall financial health to get a really good interest rate. And I'm sure that's probably something you're going to hit in the future slides too.
I can, and I know where to hit it.
Okay.
So I know where to hit it. Yeah. So that is a great question. I'll get into that right now. So these are my last 3 things that I wanted to go a little bit deep on. So let's talk about, I think we can actually jump into that right now. Let me see if I can move this over here. Okay. Now, can everybody see my screen? This is the affordability calculator. Okay. So let's just type in some stuff. You know, I kind of reset it so I can do this along with you. But we'll talk about $80,000 in annual income. Let's say the rate is, well, we talked about 3%. Okay. And for sake of conversation, let's just say that it's so $20,000. That's fine. Okay. Let me go here. I'm going to go into a couple of things. Let's say that you have a car payment of $500. Okay. You have your property taxes there. That's about right for where I think it's going to land. A little bit on the high side. This is about right. DTI tolerance. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but basically this means that whatever your income is, you can have in half of it can go to your mortgage, your car payments, your credit cards, things like that, right? So we're going to change that to 50 because generally speaking, we can go to 50 on most things. I'm going to put actually, yes. See if I can change that. Okay, and I'm going to put it at 5.5%. Okay, I'm trying to structure it as if it's a 5% down-ish type of loan. So all that said, if you got 80,000, your budget is around 525. Okay, for I would argue best case scenario. This is what a breakdown would look like. Okay, this is your principal and interest, right? This is my breakdown of your taxes, which is probably a little bit low for that high. So let me actually pump this up to 6,000. Okay, this I'm going to bring this up to around 1,200. I'm really big on being uglier than pretty, so I'd rather show you the ugliest version of the numbers that I think, and then if it gets better, great. Okay, you can qualify for a $2,800 payment. So then the algebra comes back to, okay, what does that mean? 501,000, almost 502,000 in this example. This is your payment. This is what your taxes would be, your insurance, your mortgage insurance, and that's how you back into that 2,800. This is what I want to show you. What? Because I get this all the time. How much does an increase in rate affect you in qualifying? So let's say, for sake of our conversation, and I never do this, or at least I'll let you know if I am. A lot of people are like, "Oh, qualify me for the max," right? Well, the reality is, if I qualify you at the max at 3%, but let's say rates go up. Let's say rates go up to 3.25, right? Look at this number right here. This 501. It went to 486. So that means that 0.25% in interest rate, if you're at the max, that's affecting you by around 17,000-ish in purchase power. Math is math, right? So that is super important to know kind of moving forward, because whether I get a chance to work with you, if you're working with somebody else, that's something to really take very close eye on, you know, because if you're qualified for the max, I have a lot of my people taken care of, but the loan officers that I have under me, and that's a big thing I'm telling them, hey, make sure you kind of reapprove people, because the math at 2.75 is different than the math at 3 1/8, right? So that's something that you want to be mindful of. Okay. Let me see. I have my down payment here. I'm putting it as 5% down. Did I do that right? Yes. 3%. The closing costs are normally not that high. It's only about 2.5%. Let me change that. I'm doing this on the fly with you so you guys see that I'm, you know, nothing on my sleeve. I just want to show you what the math looks like. So therefore, the money to close. Okay, let's go away. There you go, 32 grand for a house that's 500,000, and that's again a 5% down loan. If you do a 3%, that's a little bit different. But again, I'm just showing you this, guys, as a kind of a big picture helicopter view of what this math looks like. Before I jump over to the buy versus rent, do you guys have any questions?
Can we just look at that chart one more time? So
Yeah.
just in conclusion, a house around 500,000, somebody that wants to put about 5% down is looking at how much for a down payment?
30, and for 5% down is 32,000.
32,000, and that includes their closing costs as well.
Correct.
Okay, and then what would a general interest rate for something like that be?
So I would say right now, best case scenario is around 3 1/8, 3%. So to answer your question, this is a great part to answer Adrian's question. The beginning of your name is awesome, by the way, Adrian. So best case scenario in regards to rates right now is around 3%. You asked about sweet spot. If it's a conventional loan, which a loan of this size would require, because the FHA loan maxes out in the high 400s. So if we are going to, mid 400s. So if we're going to go down this road, you'd have to get into a conventional loan. The conventional loans are very FICO sensitive. And what that means is your credit score has to be as high as reasonable because it affects two things. Number one, it affects your interest rate. I would say for every 20 points, like let's call it best case scenario is a 760 score. It's about an eighth worse for every 20-point tranche. So 760 is 3%, 740 is around 3 1/8, 720 is 3 1/4, and so on. Okay, number one, but it's a double dip because you also have mortgage insurance if you're putting less than 20% down. So it's the same kind of math. So you kind of get double whacked as that progresses with your FICO. So many times, what I generally do is if your FICO score is maybe 680 or less, and you're going to go low down payment, I'm generally going to go FHA as kind of a rule of thumb. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question in that regard, Adrian. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Cool.
For those that maybe don't know, what would the lowest down payment option be for some people?
Great question. 3%. So yeah, so you can do, let me see, I think I can change that here. Bear with me, guys. That's not what I
If
want.
I can add to that, if you
Please.
want to come up with that, Adriel, if you can kind of explain to anybody, even knowing, say it's 3%, what's the best way for them to even find out what that looks like? I mean, do they have to get pre-qualified? Can they use an app? What's the best way for them to figure out, like, how I know I'm not ready to buy now, I don't have the cash in the bank, but it's a goal I want to work to. How do I know how much money I know I need to get into the bank before I can purchase and, be serious about doing this? Because I know one of the things that we usually get from a lot of people is like, I don't want to waste anybody's time. We hear that all the time. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I'm not ready. I'm a little ways out, but we want to be able to hand them those tools so that they can gather that information. So when they are ready, they know where to go.
A lot of times it's just a conversation. So part of what I do when I have that first phone call, a lot of people are like, all right, cool, you want a loan? Great. What's your social? That's not how I roll. First of all, I like friends. So I like having friends first. And if we work together, great, but I want to know kind of what you're trying to do. And if there's any holes that I already know that we're going to have, I'll know in the first 15 minutes of that conversation, sometimes even 5 to 10. It's just literally a matter of a conversation. Now, what I do is based off of that, then, hey, you know what? Great. Your income sounds good. You're you have, no baby daddy issues. Like there's so many things that we can talk about, right? So many holes. But once I get through the basic stuff, then we'll go down the road of, okay, let's go ahead and get an application based on everything. You haven't told me anything that will waste your time, and usually I bat 9 out of 10 at least, as long as they're truthful, right, on the conversation. It always gets funky when they did, oh yeah, I forgot I had that repo last week, I have stories. So, okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Adriel.
No problem. So I think you guys might like this one. And I only have one more after this, and then I'm done. So I'm going to put in here 92882. Okay. OG Corona. We'll put 550 as a purchase value. So let's go through this. This is, I just roll with me on this, guys. Okay. And I think you guys might like this. So this is assuming, okay, a home that is 550,000 is roughly around 2583 square feet. Professionals, is that pretty much dead on, more or less, within reason?
Yes, they're good.
So let's talk about rent. So a home that is 2583 square feet, Robert, Christy, where do you think the rents might land for something like that?
Getting close to that 32 mark.
Okay, so it's pretty much dead on then. Okay, so we'll put I'm actually going to leave it. I'm going to leave it at the 3177, just because I like to be ugly and pretty. Including renter's insurance, we talked about the rent increases, right? We've had about rent increases of around 5.9 or so per year. Now, the national average is around 2.3. Riverside County specifically is 5.9. What I would like to do is, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to put it in half, if that's okay with you guys, because I want to show the ugliest version of the numbers. Is that cool? Okay. So let's just say that the rent increases are just 3%, right? Landlords are able, I believe, to increase as much as 10% a year. Am I correct, Christy, with that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're being crazy conservative at 3%. Okay. Property taxes, I'm going to bump this up a little bit too.
I mean, I think earlier we actually did 6% just because we were watching that trend as well. And then we backed it down to 2 just to.
Yeah.
Just to be ugly. Yep. So we're taking all this into consideration. We're comparing renting versus buying. When you would sell a home, if you were to sell a home, and it would cost you roughly 6% by the time you're all in and whatnot. Now let's take everything into consideration. Let's talk about the new loan. 550. I just put it together as a 10% down loan for the sake of compare and contrast. I wonder if I can change this. 10% of 550 is 4. I can always use a calculator because that'd be smart. I'm trying to stay consistent with the 95% song. Oh, duh, if I just put it in there. There you go. Okay. Fixed, we'll do the rate at 3 for now. Okay. Let's do it. Let's pump it up. Let's go 3 1/4. Okay. Again, I want to go down the road of being ugly. So we talked about the FICO score, Adrian, a little bit ago. Do you see how this says 0.66 on the monthly? Sorry, here's some static. You see how remember we talked earlier about the tranches? Like Robocop. 760. You see how it dropped to 0.38? Can you see that okay?
Yes, I can.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. When we talked about the double dipping on what hits you on the FICO score, with regards to 760 and above, and then 20-point tranches, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
It was 0.38 there, but look if it's 680, almost 1%.
Oh, okay.
That's why FICO is so important. So again, for sake of the now, let's assume that you're the best. Lastly, on this, we're going to look at something that takes it out 9 years. Let's do your area. And so here it says historical appreciation over time. It's been about 5% a year. We're forecasting 5.55. I'm going to go with Do you guys want to use 4.92, or do you guys want to go with the lower number on appreciation, guys?
What you have there is fine.
Okay, very good. So that's what we'll roll with, okay? And I'm even putting in here tax rates, okay? So it's a true total cost situation. This is what I want to show you. The payment all in on this is around $33.28. Again, you put a 5% down payment, okay? But that's already taken into consideration. $33.28. Your rent, we're saying, would be all in right around $32.25. Now, as time progresses, and we have rents that increase, and this is a very modest 3%. This is national average 2.3. We're doing 3%, even though it's 6%. Over time, that rent is going to increase. And actually, this is the one thing for me that as I see rents increase, I see this as being crazy relevant, because your payment's going to be the same in 9 years when the rents are $4,000. And then that may sound far-fetched, but frankly, I know of homes that were renting for $2,700 4 years ago, and they're now renting for $4,000. That's real. You can look it up yourself. So this is not, to me, at least the way inflation is going and whatnot, this is not out of the realm of possibility. I actually think it's very, very accurate. When you combine, so that's just cash flow. That's just month. I'm not even talked about appreciation. I haven't talked about paying down a mortgage. When you start, so just in cash flow over 9 years, you're up around $28,000 versus renting on a modest 3%. You take into consideration also the appreciation gain that we talked about, right? Again, we're going with the lower amount, the 4.92, not the 18% like we did last year, right? Or the 5.9 that's forecasted. We're going on just historical average. That's it. Based off of that, we have a value on that home that was $550 now for $847 over, again, 9 years out. So we're talking full cycles, in the game. You add to that what you paid into that mortgage over those 9 years, you end up actually up overall almost $370,000, $370,000 overall over time. And I love the fact that this graph takes into consideration, hey, the first year you would lose money, right? Why? Because if you sell the home, right, you have closing costs to sell the home, so you would lose money. So it's taking that into consideration, and it's taking it over time, right? What the net gain is. So you combine that with everything else we talked about, there's, to me at least, nothing but your payments on sale, appreciation, even if it's modest, is good. Rents, even if they're modest, you're still good. You win almost in a no matter what situation. So hopefully, I don't know if this is helpful, but this is, I really like showing this kind of chart. And we did it live, so it's not like I threw some funky numbers in there. This is math. Math is math. So
very helpful. That 28,543 again?
Pardon me?
What was that 28,543 amount? Cash flow difference in what? And is that
in the difference in the great question? No, great question. In the cash flow. So here, for example, we're saying your payment is on buying is $33.28, but your rent is $32.25, right? So for sake of conversation, that's about $100 more. So as you can see, the rent payment here is lower than the actual payment, but I'm going to get you a fixed payment. That's only going to get better because we have mortgage insurance that will fall off and blah, blah, blah. But I'm staying with worst case in regards to the payment. Over time, that rent is going to go up. Okay. And I'm just putting it at a modest 3%. And even with that rent going up over again, only 3%, cash flow wise, you're up just in pure cash flow. Forget appreciation. Let's say it doesn't go up at all. But rents continue to go up. You would be up around $28,000.
Right. Okay.
What, of course, what you would add to that is when you're in a rent, you're paying somebody else's mortgage, and this amortization goes to that principal reduction goes to your landlord, so he can thank you or she can thank you, right? This at least is now yours.
Adriel. So would it be fair to say that your down payment would reduce that, let's say the 30 grand that you put in? So technically,
great question. No,
70.
Great question. No, because this is taking into consideration the payment itself. Right here, the loan. This is taking into consideration the loan itself. So the amount that was put into there, it's like just an investment, right? And that's another thing too. And I wish I had a quick way to show that. But think about a lot. Remember the example I gave about. I think I can pop it up over here really quick. This. This one. This example, I talked about income versus rise in price, right? The same kind of math applies. If you think about it, let's say you put $40,000 to buy a home, $30,000 to buy a home, okay? You put $30,000 to buy a home, but the asset that is $500,000 goes up 5% in a year. That's $25,000. So that ROI, right? That ROI in that example is 100%, right? Because you made basically the amount that you put in regards to down payment. Yeah, excuse me, about 30,000 that you put down, but you actually made 25,000. Well, that would multiply over years. So a lot of people think about it. So when you think about true return on investment, it's a leveraged asset, right? Because I don't want to get too much into the weeds. I'm sorry, but what's growing is the 500,000, not the 40,000 or 30,000 that you put in. Does that make sense? The 30,000 is just one part of it. What's growing is the asset.
I just remember a real estate instructor years ago saying, the less you invest, the less opportunity for you to lose that amount. So try to invest as least possible because the gains will offset that.
I agree actually 100%. I'm a big fan. I just, for the sake of this conversation and I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible in the context of this conversation. But I'm a big fan of the 3% down, using as little money as possible. The money is so cheap. Why wouldn't you get more of it and just keep more money in savings? I'm a big fan of keeping cash in your bank and all that kind of stuff. The mortgage insurance is also super cheap, a lot cheaper than what people think. Especially if you have a good FICO, the world's yours.
Awesome. Hey, Adriel, I got a couple other questions that we'll talk about. I know people have been asking some questions. We'll kind of get to those to the end because we want to keep this flowing a little bit. I want you to jump into how are we going to position our offers to win? So tell us a little bit about that theory of yours and helping us to be able to help our clients to be able to do that. And then we'll get to the question and answers, you guys, if you don't mind, when we get to the end.
No, but thank you for that. If you want to dance at the prom, you got to make sure you put on some pumps. You got to put up some lipstick. You got to put on a nice dress. You can't come trashy to the prom if you want somebody to dance with you. So right now, I believe the way you come correct, if you want to call it that way, is when you make an offer, there's two main parts. And that has to do, for me, with cash and terms. Let's define cash. Cash has to do, when I say cash, I don't mean greenbacks. I don't need you to go get me 20 grand from the bank. What I'm talking about is the ability to have monies available, ready to close, okay, in the bank. It could be your money, or it could be somebody else's money, maybe a relative, a mom, dad, uncle, whoever. As long as it's in the bank, it plays. Why is that important in offers? When I talk about looking pretty at the prom, when you are 1 out of 15 offers, then let me kind of kick it back to you, Robert and Christy, as you guys are phenomenal listing agents as well. What are the things that you're already weeding out? I mean, so now you're on the other side of the table. You've got 15 offers. Which are the ones that you guys are weeding out?
Their ability to close, meaning the lender that they choose is huge. It's very important to us. In other words, what we mean by that is if it's a big bank, we tend to steer away from some of those because of the big banks they're just so big and they have so much red tape, they trip over their own feet. So there's some issues with that. If they decide to go above asking price, the list price, because we usually list ours at market value or just above, that they have to have the additional funds to be able to make up the difference. Terms is huge for us. If we have a seller that needs to move to another location, how willing is that buyer going to be able to allow them to look for a home as well, which is really challenging. We all know, because even those buyers are having a hard time. So those are some of the key factors that we're looking for. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think we decided, talked about this earlier. It was cash, flexibility, terms, and the lender.
It's very important for a buyer to be able to buy a home. I would go so far as to say it's actually more important for the seller that's going to buy another home. Why? Because if you think about it, This is why the listing agent is so protective, good agents are so protective of what offers are coming in, because it's not always the highest offer. It's not always the one that has cash, right? There might be somebody, bam, 500 grand cash, right? And I've seen it, right? Those are not always the ones that get the deal. Whoever can close and the listing agent can trust, be it bank and whatnot, because there's so many dominoes that are affecting by it. If the buyer, which would be the first leg, doesn't close, that means the seller that is ready to move into their new home can't close. Now they just burned 30 days. Maybe they just burned a deposit. Maybe they just burned. I know of somebody that on a multi-million-dollar home that lost an $80,000 earnest money deposit because they didn't do it in time. So there's multiple levels. So that's why the listing agent, a good listing agent, is going to see all the offers. We're seeing, who put on lipstick, right? Who put on the nice dress? Who are we going to dance with? And they'll make it. They'll narrow it down to the ones that have the money available in case, let's say they're going above asking price, that they have the money available to play. That's a big one. And in my world, I'll talk to you about that in a bit. But the terms, right? How long of an escrow it's going to be? If there's any down payment assistance, a lot of times that's frowned upon because there's another layer, right? If there's certain programs where if you have a special appraisal, that's another layer. If something has a chance to go wrong, those are points that are docked from your offer, for lack of a better way of saying it. So whatever you can do to have the prettiest offer, that comes with working with somebody professional that knows what they're doing, especially in the form of a lender. Obviously, I'm a lender. I would love to be able to help you. But I think one of the things that sets us apart a little bit is locally, at least, I don't think I've ever done a lot out of state, come to think about it. But you have to have somebody with a reputation locally that can close locally. When you are working with somebody that's a big bank and maybe the LO was worked at T-Mobile last week and now he's a loan officer or something, that's a different LO. And when there's a communication gap and that trust is not there, which happens much with these online lenders, especially, that's not necessarily in your best interest. So,
I have a question with that.
yes.
This could go to both Robert and Christy and Adriel. So talking about buyers' ability to close and having and showing proof of that cash to be able to close. If someone is sourcing their money from a 401k, a retirement, annuity, what have you, do you recommend that they jump the gun, so to speak, and get that money into their accounts? Or do you recommend to leave it where it's originally sourced and then move forward then?
A lot of times, that's a great question, Bernie. So a lot of times they won't let them because part of the context of a 401k is you can't just pull it out for no reason, right? That's horrible grammar. You cannot pull it out for any reason. Normally what they have to do is they have to show a loan estimate or a contract, a ratified contract, so they can show Fidelity or whoever, hey, I really am buying a house, give me my money so I don't get a penalty. Because if they just pull it out before, they're going to get whacked with a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Well, if you're taking out 50 grand, that's five grand just because. So normally that's the wrong advice to take it out early. You want to wait until you're actually in contract. Normally that money is wired or they give you a check and we'll handle it from there. But it's more prudent to wait until you're actually in contract. To show proof of funds at closing, you just show the statement.
What are you saying? What are you seeing on those type of delays with those 401ks? Is that like a week, 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah. 2 weeks would be ugly.
Okay.
Sorry, can you touch base a little bit too on, you mentioned sometimes that the buyers down payment assistance programs can be a detriment. And I know I think Adrian had that question. And so we touched a little bit about that, but what about gift money? How does that get sourced and when does that have to be sourced?
Great question.
And how much can that be?
All of it.
Okay.
All of it. That's a fantastic question. One of the best ones is that all of the money for down payment, if you are buying a home, an owner occupied home, both for conventional and FHA, can all be a gift. All of it. A gift is one thing that's very important with a gift is I could probably stop sharing actually. Let's respond to questions. The big thing with a gift is as long as that person that's a donor has it. So let's say Crystal is going to let me borrow 30 grand, okay, or have, because it's a gift, not a borrow, have, because Crystal loves me. So the $30,000, she would have to show me a bank statement that she has 30,000 to give me. It can't just be some random thing like, oh yeah, my cousin Larry is going to, give me 30 grand, okay? And no, it has to be where you have it. And just like when you make the offer, because obviously if my account is nice and skinny, I would have to show Crystal's bank statement as well to say, hey, look, I really do have the amount to consummate the deal. And the way a gift is generally handled, I do not want the money. This is a very important point. I never want the money. It's doable, but I never want the money to go directly to the borrower. So I don't want Crystal to wire me money. I would want Crystal to wire the money to the escrow company that we are in escrow with. And the reason for that is frankly less paperwork. That's the biggest thing. Less steps. Okay. And then there will also be a letter, kind of a fill in the blank type of letter that would say, I, Crystal McGuigan, am gifting $30,000 to Adriel Esparza for the purchase of buying 123 Main Street, coming out of my Bank of America account, and I do not expect to get repaid. In short, that's the fill in the blank letter.
That's great information. Actually, just learned something there. I didn't realize that it could go one straight to escrow. I thought it had to get into the buyer's account, and secondly, that all of it can be given. I just thought it was a portion. So
it used to be 5% can come from your own funds.
Yeah.
But not anymore. The whole thing can be yours.
Okay.
I had a client last week that bought a condo 2 weeks ago in Marietta, and it's complicated, but there was like baby daddy money that came in where it was like just cash deposits and stuff like that, and just I couldn't use it. And so ultimately she only had like $5 grand to play with, even though she had 20,000 in the bank. So what ended up happening was mom had 35 grand in the bank, already in the bank, right? Sourced. She is the one that gifted her money. What they did after that, I don't know, because to me, it's a gift. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
I have one question, but it's a little bit more complicated, but let's ask the rest of these questions first.
So there's a couple of questions on here that and we've answered throughout your presentation. What are some of the simplest ways that we can improve our FICO score?
Great question. Get your debt under 30%, your credit cards. The simplest one is pay down debt down to under 30% of whatever you owe. That is very, very quick way to get that good to go. You want to take things out of dispute. And the reason why, because obviously the whole premise of a dispute is that it doesn't affect your score. The problem in my world is that we know that. So when I run an automated underwriting, through Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, FHA, whatever, they already know, like, hey, take that out of dispute because I don't know what the real score is. How do we manage risk? How do we calculate risk if you're not telling me the real score because of that disputed account? So that's important. Your FICO might go the other way, but you can't get a loan without it. Another thing with regards to credit, try not to have a lot of inquiries. Store loans are bad. So like, for example, if you have like a Kohl's card or a JCPenney card, well, the problem is you can only use it at JCPenney. You can only use it at Kohl's. You can only use it, now if you get a Visa card, all those are good. But all the ones that are just like one place, they're not necessarily good for your score. The biggest thing has to do with the revolving credit. And let's say, you got care credit and you got your grill done, right? You got some teeth work done. It could be a $4,000 expense with now a $4,000 limit. And now you're maxed out, quote unquote, on that credit card. Well, that will affect you, So credit use, you want to try to keep it at 30%. If you take one thing away from this part of it, is you get that under 30%.
You mentioned multiple inquiries. The other question was, is does having someone check your credit affect your score? So I know that if you're within the same realm, you know, and you're shopping for a car, you're shopping for a home, is there any grace on that?
Great question. Fantastic question. So you can run your credit with 100 mortgage companies in a period of 3 weeks, and it should only affect it one time. It should only be a drop of like 13 points. And the premise there is, of course, you should have the ability to shop around. If you're not comfortable with whoever initially ran your credit, or maybe they didn't give you something that you didn't like, then you can check again. And it's the same thing for automobiles. Yeah, this is the same rule basically. So you can be able to shop around for the best terms, for whatever is best for you.
Okay.
Great question.
I think that was all the questions in the chat box,
there's
right?
a down payment assistant question that Adrian had.
And he touched on that a moment ago, saying that they were actually could hurt
Well,
our offers, but are all buyers eligible for down payment assistance programs?
So yeah, let's talk about that. It's actually a good question. So first of all, you can own a home and be a first-time buyer. As long as you haven't owned a home, there's two caveats. A lot of people don't know this. It's pretty fun. If you haven't owned a home in the most recent 3 years, so let's say you owned a home in 2015. Where this comes up a lot is married couple, they were divorced, right? And stuff like that. And then now they're no longer own a home and they've been renting and now they're ready to buy. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm not a first-time buyer because I own a home. No, if you weren't an owner of a home for the last recent 3 years, you're considered to be a first-time buyer. So that's really cool. The other little hole in it is, and this doesn't happen very often, but I've got people that own investment properties, but don't live in a property that they own. So they rent where they live, but they own an investment property. Same rule, 3 years. If that's the case, you can technically get a first-time buyer program. Pretty cool, huh? So you can make, a lot of the programs allow you to make up to $140,000 for down payment assistance. There's two basic ones. I didn't want to get overly long-winded in the slides. If not, I would have included it. But the two basic ones, one's a grant and one is a loan. Obviously, I try to do the one that's a grant because what happens is it stays on as a loan, but then it gets forgiven after 3 years. I like that one. That one's pretty cool. The other one is a forever loan. So you'll come in with less money, but you'll have a second on your house until you refinance it or you sell the house. So
that's driven based off of income and FICO, correct? Or just income?
You need a 680 to play nowadays. There's a couple that are 640. That would put you into the FHA realm, like we talked about earlier. You know, if you have a lower FICO score, but that would be the way to go.
Okay.
And then the question I had was, do bridge loans, are they still in existence? And
bridge loans?
Yeah. You know,
I'm sure they're in existence. I haven't done one in a while. Okay. Yeah. I get emails on that all the time. It's just not my wheelhouse. But you know, the reason why though I don't do them is because they're so darn expensive. There's a lot of loans that I can do, but if I don't, I'm kind of weird that way. Like if I don't believe in it, back in 2006, there was a lot of stated loans and 2-year fixed and negative amortization loans. And, you know, I had a lot of friends that were making money hand over fist doing those loans. I struggle with it. Just like mentally, if I can't, like, if I'm, you know, I remember vividly, there was a lady that was a home cleaner, house cleaner. And she wanted to buy a home that was $800,000, but she had the FICO score, you know, and her justification I remember was, yeah, you know, there's 5 bedrooms, so I can rent that room for $500 and that room for $500 and that room, and I can make the payment, you know. I'm like, yeah, but what if like one person doesn't? And she ended up getting a loan with somebody else because I told her, it's like, I can't do that. I just can't put my brain around that. I'm setting you up to fail, and that's not why I do this. So, yeah.
And this is why we hire you to help our buyers, because you're honest and you tell it straight, and you want to make sure that your client is, our client, your client has the best experience, and that you don't lead them down the wrong path. So that's why we appreciate you so much. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Are we
Okay,
frozen or
For
is
me,
frozen?
No, am I frozen?
Okay.
you,
I won't dance more than
you
that.
froze.
All right.
So this one,
Christy.
I'll try and make this fast, but this one's sort of broad. Can you guys see me? Hear me?
You
Is
just
everything okay?
in and out, but
So what if somebody is currently a homeowner, they're trying to decide, maybe they're at like a 4.5 or something percent. They're trying to decide, do I refinance?
hey, Crystal, you're freezing up a little bit. You might want to have to put that in a chat. We'll have to ask Adriel. So we're going to have to wrap this up a little bit. Is it okay? Okay,
Yeah.
she's
Do I
frozen.
sell? And then
She's not hearing us.
You're-
You're frozen,
You're frozen,
Crystal.
I
Crystal.
just heard you.
So we'll go
I
ahead
just
and,
heard
and you can, we'll have to put that in the chat. If you can get that in the chat before we wrap this up, and then we can ask him, but you're kind of going in and out, Crystal. So it's not kind of coming across.
It's very amusing though.
It was amusing, yes. So,
Do I sell?
well, if there's not any other questions, we definitely want to open it up for you guys that are here visiting us for any other questions.
Not yet. That joke.
Can you mute her? Most importantly, though, we really hope you guys found value in this. We know you found value in Adriel's presentation. We would love an opportunity for you guys to talk further with him if you have any additional questions. Where's your slide, Adriel, that talks, like your closing slide about how to contact you? Because as you guys know, this is 45 minutes, 50 minutes of a presentation. There's a lot more to the lending environment and purchasing of a home, but this is a good information to get you guys started. And reach out to a trusted lender, reach out to Adriel so he can ask or answer some more of those questions for you guys. And call one of us here at the Robert and Christy team if you haven't already connected with us to help you buy that home when you're ready. Even if you're not ready today, you're ready in a few months. You know, get this process starting. That's the goal, is to be prepared. Isn't that correct, Adriel?
Absolutely. It's all about just having the plan. I have people that I talked to yesterday where, like I talked to you, like I said, about that 10-15 minute conversation, and tell them, one guy didn't have a FICO, and there's a process there. The key is, are they going to do what I say, right? Because a lot of people, they like to march to the beat of their own drum, and that's cool, but then that's not necessarily going to help them. So if the end game is trying to buy something, well, I can show you how. One of my big mantras is, and I heard this, I think 15 years ago, and I try to stay with it, is don't tell me no, show me how. So even if the no is right now, okay, well, how? Because everybody can eventually buy. I've seen some crazy stuff. And if they do what they're supposed to do, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. But you gotta go with the plan. Sometimes that plan is a month, sometimes it's 3 weeks, sometimes it's a couple of years. It depends on the situation.
I like that. Don't tell me no, just show me how.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Of course.
Four things, bro.
Yeah, so I've been saying something to my clients that I feel is really resonating with them. And what I'm telling them, there's two parts to this whole home buying process in terms of getting ready. One is getting ready in your mind, and two is getting ready on paper. And sometimes you're ready in your mind before you're ready on paper, and sometimes you're ready on paper before you're in your mind. But the goal is to be completely ready when you bring those two together.
Right.
So, because I think there's a separation there that people aren't really considering or thinking about. But I've been telling my buyers this, and it's really clicking with them.
Good share. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think we have 2 more questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up, you guys. Go ahead.
If an owner wants to consider refinancing, what if an owner wants to consider refinancing versus selling and buying? What are
How
your
much you
thoughts?
like where you live? I mean, there's a lot of factors to that. I'm personally in exactly that situation right now.
But are you our guy to be able to do that? You can help help our clients to potentially balance those options and make that determination, and then help them
Absolutely.
to move forward with whichever they choose.
There's a lot of people. Yeah, there's a lot of
Can you
people.
also help them buy out of state?
Crystal, can you repeat the last part?
Can you help them if they want to buy out of state?
I have access to that. Yes, out of state. Yes. To answer your question, there's a lot of people that I tell them don't sell, because if they got a crazy low tax rate, on their property. I mean, that could, let's say they bought the home 25 years, or let's say they bought it in 2009, and they bought a home in Moreno Valley for 30 grand. How am I going to compete with, a $1,000 a month tax bill, or $1,000 a year tax bill, where their new tax bill is going to be, $6 grand. That's $500 a month. That will negate, if you refi, that will negate any benefit of the rate. So that's why my initial response was, how much do you like where you live? Yeah. Right? Because if that's like the house, then keep it. What I suggest in many of those cases is just keep it, refinance it, and then right now that you're an owner occupant, get the best rate for that house, refi it, and keep it. Okay. You only need 5% down as a second time buyer. Just, round up your nuts and use that, versus like, oh my God, here's another thing. This is, I know a lot of this group knows this rule of thumb for me. For every $1,000 that you put into a loan, it's around $5 to $6 in payment. So if you give, I'm going to scrounge up some more nuts and I got $10,000 more, I want to get this payment as low as possible, it's only going to drop your payment $60.
Good to know.
That's really good info.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's why it's important.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, we want to thank everyone who attended, and we appreciate everybody's participation and questions. And if any of you need anything from any team member here or from Adriel, feel free to contact us at any time. And we'll hope you have a blessed evening, and we're going to go ahead and sign off.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Adriel, thank you so much.
Thanks again, Adriel.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for your attention.
Okay.
Okay.